The alien councillors sneered as they voted to abandon humanity, not knowing that they had just unleashed a fury that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. Jason Adams sat in the Galactic Council chamber, his fists clenched, knuckles white, as he watched the proceedings unfold on the holoscreen before him. The emergency session had been called to address the imminent threat of the Vorzat invasion fleet, a merciless armada that had already reduced a dozen systems to ashes. As Earth's reluctant representative, Jason had hoped to secure aid from the Council. But Councillor Pryler, a spindly Ithorian with bulbous eyes, had other plans. He gestured emphatically as he spoke, his voice grating like rusted metal. "The humans are a primitive, warlike species," Pryler declared. "They have refused to fully integrate into our galactic community, and their military power is laughable. I move that we withdraw all support and leave them to their fate." Jason surged to his feet, his heart pounding. "You can't do this. We need your help. The Vorzat will slaughter us." Pryler fixed him with a cold stare. "The decision has been made, human. The Council will not risk our resources for a lost cause." The vote was swift and unanimous. Earth would receive no aid. Jason watched in disbelief as humanity's supposed allies turned their backs. His blood boiled with anger and betrayal. Earth was on its own. But if the Council thought this was the end of humanity, they were gravely mistaken. They had no idea of the strength and resilience that coursed through human veins. They had sowed the seeds of their own destruction by underestimating the human spirit. As Jason stormed out of the chamber, his mind raced with the grim reality that faced his people. They would have to fight alone against impossible odds, but fight they would, and they would shock the galaxy with their determination. They would forge their own path to victory, no matter the cost, for in the darkest hour the true mettle of humanity would be tested and proven unbreakable. Jason stormed through the polished hallways of the Galactic Council chambers, his boots thudding against the marble floor. The sneering faces of the councillors were seared into his mind, their callous dismissal of Earth's plight fueling the rage burning in his chest. As he approached the space elevator, his wrist communicator chimed insistently. He tapped the device, and a hologram of General Briggs materialized. The general's weathered face was etched with grim determination. "Adams, we have a situation. Long-range sensors just picked up the Vorzat invasion fleet entering the outer reaches of the solar system. EDC projections give us a few hours at best before they reach Earth orbit." Jason's stomach clenched. The Vorzat were coming, and they were coming fast. "Understood, General. I'm on my way back now." Briggs nodded curtly. "Get your ass back here ASAP. We need you to help coordinate the planetary defense efforts. Briggs out." The hologram winked out, leaving Jason alone with his thoughts. As he stepped into the space elevator, Jason's mind raced. The Vorzat's reputation as ruthless conquerors was well known throughout the galaxy. No civilization had ever withstood their onslaught intact. Pryler's mocking words echoed in his ears, reminding him of the vast technological gap between Earth and the galactic standard. The elevator began its ascent, the stars blurring into streaks of light outside the viewport. Jason leaned his forehead against the cool glass, his breath fogging the surface. Earth was on its own, facing an enemy that outclassed them in every way. The odds were stacked against them, the chances of survival slim. But Jason knew that failure was not an option. If Earth fell, humanity would be wiped out or enslaved, their culture and way of life erased from the cosmos. They had to fight, even if it meant facing impossible odds. They would stand their ground and show the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit. As the space elevator carried him back to Earth, Jason steeled himself for the battle to come. The Vorzat may have superior technology and a reputation for conquest, but they had never faced an opponent like humanity before. Earth would not go quietly into the night. They would fight to their last breath, and they would make the Vorzat pay for every inch of ground they took. The fate of humanity rested on the shoulders of Jason and those like him. It was time to show the galaxy what humans were truly made of. The space elevator deposited Jason at the Earth Defense Command headquarters. He hit the ground running, sprinting through the entrance and navigating the labyrinth of corridors with practiced ease. The war room doors parted and he burst in, slightly out of breath. General Briggs stood at the central holotable, his brow furrowed as he studied the tactical displays. He glanced up as Jason approached. "Adams, glad you made it. Take a look at this." Jason joined him at the table, his eyes widening as he took in the data. The Vorzat fleet was massive, dwarfing anything humanity had ever faced. 12 dreadnoughts, each capable of reducing a planet to molten slag, hung in the void like monstrous predators. Hundreds of battlecruisers and destroyers swarmed around them, bristling with weapons. Thousands of troop transports followed in their wake, packed with millions of Vorzat warriors eager for blood. In contrast, Earth's defenses looked pitiful. A few hundred warships, most of them outdated and outclassed, formed a thin line of resistance. The ground forces numbered barely 1 million, a mix of regular military and hastily trained civilian militia. They were brave men and women, but against the Vorzat they might as well have been throwing rocks. Briggs ran a hand over his face, his expression grim. "I won't sugarcoat it, Adams. Our chances of victory are virtually non-existent. The Vorzat will crush us like insects." The room fell silent, the weight of the general's words sinking in. Despair hung heavy in the air, suffocating and oppressive. Suddenly a voice cut through the gloom. "Sir, I have an idea." Jason turned to see a young lieutenant, his uniform crisp and his eyes bright with determination. The man stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly but filled with conviction. "Lieutenant Mark Pearson, sir. I've been studying the Vorzat's command structure. They're rigid, inflexible. Everything flows from the War Masters on the flagship. If we could get a team on board, assassinate the War Masters, it would throw their entire invasion into disarray." Briggs frowned, considering the proposal. Jason met his gaze, seeing the same realization dawn in the general's eyes. It was a desperate gambit, a last-ditch effort. But with no other options, what choice did they have? "It's a long shot," Briggs said slowly, "but it might be our only chance. Pearson, gather a strike team. Handpick the best of the best. We'll need to move fast and hit hard." The war room erupted into activity, officers and technicians scrambling to their stations. Jason grabbed Mark's arm, pulling him aside. "I'm leading the mission," he said, his voice brooking no argument. "I've got the most experience with the Vorzat. I know their tactics, their weaknesses." Mark nodded, his eyes shining with a mix of fear and excitement. "Understood, sir. I'll assemble the team. We'll be ready to go in an hour." Jason clapped him on the shoulder, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Good man, let's show these Vorzat bastards what humans are made of." As Mark hurried off to make preparations, Jason turned back to the holotable. The odds were stacked against them, the chances of success slim. But he refused to let despair take hold. They would fight, they would struggle, and they would make the Vorzat bleed for every inch of Earth's soil. For the fate of humanity, failure was not an option. Jason strode into the hangar bay, his eyes fixed on the sleek black shape of the Shadow Fox. The stealthed corvette was a marvel of engineering, designed to slip through enemy sensors like a ghost. He spotted Sergeant Rico Velasquez, his old squad mate from the Marines, checking the ship's external plating. Rico was a demolitions expert and a damn good soldier. Jason knew he could trust him with his life. "Rico," Jason called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space, "you're with me on this one. I need a solid second in command." Rico looked up, a grin spreading across his face. He jogged over to Jason and clapped him on the shoulder. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, boss. Let's go kick some Vorzat ass." Jason chuckled, the sound grim in the tense atmosphere. "Glad to have you on board. We've got a tech specialist coming along too, Lieutenant Mark Pearson. Smart kid, came up with this crazy plan." Rico nodded, his expression turning serious. "I've heard of him. If he's half as good as they say, we might just pull this off." As if on cue, Mark emerged from a side door, a dozen hand-picked Marines trailing behind him. They were the best of the best, each one a hardened veteran of countless battles. Jason knew they would follow him into the jaws of hell itself. The team made their way to the armory, gearing up for the mission. Jason strapped on his trusty plasma rifle, the weapon humming to life in his hands. Rico paused, his eyes drawn to a dust-covered crate in the corner. He wiped away the grime, revealing the words Project Goliath stenciled on the side. "What the hell is this?" Rico muttered, prying open the crate. Inside, nestled in protective foam, were a dozen sleek black suits of powered armor. Rico let out a low whistle. "I've heard about these. Experimental tech, never saw widespread deployment. Too expensive and complex," they said. Jason stepped closer, running his fingers over the smooth, matte surface of the armor. "Looks like they were just waiting for the right moment. Suit up, people. We're going to need every advantage we can get." The team donned the suits, marveling at the enhanced strength and speed they provided. The armor molded to their bodies like a second skin, the advanced tactical displays flickering to life in their visors. Jason flexed his fingers, feeling the raw power thrumming through the suit's hydraulics. Suddenly an alarm blared through the hangar. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Jason's comms crackled to life, General Briggs' voice tense and urgent. "Adams, the Vorzet fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're in Earth orbit. You need to move now." Jason felt a surge of adrenaline, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. This was it, the moment of truth. He turned to his team, his voice steady and commanding. "You heard the man. Let's get this bird in the air. We've got a flagship to infiltrate and some war masters to take down. Failure is not an option. The fate of humanity rests on our shoulders." The team boarded the Shadow Fox, strapping into their seats as the engines roared to life. Jason took his place in the cockpit, his hands flying over the controls. With a final glance at the determined faces of his squad, he punched the thrusters, sending the ship hurtling out of the hangar and into the star-studded void. As they raced towards the looming Vorzat fleet, Jason's mind was focused on one thing: reaching the flagship before the invasion began in earnest. The powered armor gave them an edge, but they were still vastly outnumbered and outgunned. They would have to rely on stealth, speed, and sheer audacity to pull off this impossible mission. The Shadow Fox darted through the enemy formation, its stealth systems rendering it virtually invisible to the Vorzat sensors. Jason guided the ship with expert precision, weaving through the massive dreadnoughts and bristling battlecruisers. The flagship loomed ahead, a monstrous vessel that dwarfed even the mighty warships surrounding it. Jason gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on the controls. They were close now, the point of no return. As the Shadow Fox slipped into the flagship's hangar bay, he knew that the real battle was about to begin. The fate of Earth and all of humanity hung in the balance. The Shadow Fox sliced through the void, its matte black hull rendering it virtually invisible against the starry backdrop. Jason guided the ship with expert precision, weaving through the Vorzat picket ships like a wraith. The stolen access codes worked like a charm, allowing them to dock with the massive flagship Dreadhammer without raising any alarms. As the airlock hissed open, Jason and his team moved swiftly, their power armor enhancing their strength and speed. They encountered a squad of Vorzat guards, but the sleek black suits made short work of them. Plasma bolts ricocheted off the armor's reinforced plating as the team returned fire, dropping the aliens with ruthless efficiency. They pushed deeper into the ship, following the route to the bridge. Mark accessed a terminal along the way, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. "I've got something," he said, his voice tight with tension. "Schematics of the ship's power core. If we can detonate it, the explosion should cripple the entire fleet." Jason leaned in, studying the glowing diagrams. The power core was located deep within the ship, heavily guarded and fortified. Reaching it would be a suicide mission, but the potential payoff was too great to ignore. He glanced at the chronometer on his HUD, the numbers ticking down relentlessly. Time was running out and Earth's fate hung in the balance. "Change of plans," Jason said, his voice grim. "We're splitting up. Mark, you take the majority of the team and complete the original mission. Kill those War Masters and throw the invasion into chaos. I'll take Rico and a few others to destroy the power core. We'll buy you as much time as we can." Mark nodded, his face etched with determination. "Understood, sir. We won't let you down." Jason clasped his shoulder, a wordless acknowledgement passing between them. They both knew the odds of survival were slim, but they were ready to lay down their lives for Earth and humanity. Rico stepped forward, his eyes gleaming behind his visor. "I've got your back, boss. Let's give these Vorzat bastards a taste of human ingenuity." Jason selected a few other Marines to join them, each one a hardened veteran ready to sacrifice everything for the mission. With a final nod to Mark and the rest of the team, they set off towards the power core, their footsteps echoing through the alien corridors. As they navigated the labyrinthine passages, Jason's mind raced with the implications of their actions. If they succeeded, they would deal a crippling blow to the Vorzat invasion, giving Earth a fighting chance. But the cost would be high, and he knew that not everyone would make it back. They encountered more resistance along the way, Vorzat soldiers pouring out from every junction and doorway. The team fought like demons, their power armor allowing them to shrug off hits that would have killed an unprotected human. Plasma bolts and shrapnel filled the air, the acrid scent of burning metal and ozone thick in their nostrils. Jason led from the front, his plasma rifle spitting death with every squeeze of the trigger. Rico was a whirlwind of destruction, his demolition charges turning Vorzat warriors into clouds of bloody mist. The other Marines fought with equal ferocity, driven by the knowledge that their sacrifice could mean the difference between humanity's survival and extinction. As they neared the power core, the resistance intensified. Elite Vorzat guards, clad in their own fearsome armor, barred their way. Jason and his team met them head-on, engaging in a brutal close-quarters battle. Armored fists crashed against alien metal, plasma blades hissed and sparked, and the air was filled with the screams of the dying. Through sheer grit and determination, they pushed forward, leaving a trail of Vorzat corpses in their wake. The power core loomed ahead, a pulsing mass of energy that thrummed with barely contained power. Jason knew that detonating it would mean their own deaths, but there was no hesitation in his heart. Earth needed them, and they would not fail. Rico set the charges, his hands steady even as the weight of their impending doom settled on their shoulders. Jason and the others took up defensive positions, ready to hold off the Vorzat for as long as possible. The timer on the charges ticked down, each second bringing them closer to oblivion. As the Vorzat launched their final assault, Jason and his team met them with unwavering resolve. They fought like heroes, their power armor pushed to the limit, their weapons blazing until the very end. And when the charges detonated, the explosion tore through the flagship like a supernova, consuming everything in its path. In that moment, as the world turned white and the roar of the explosion filled his ears, Jason's last thoughts were of Earth and the billions of lives he had helped to save. He had given everything, and he knew that his sacrifice would not be in vain. The Vorzat would feel the wrath of humanity, and Earth would endure no matter the cost. Jason and Rico charged through the corridors of the Dreadhammer, their power armor enhancing their speed and strength. Vorzat warriors poured out from every doorway and junction, plasma bolts sizzling through the air as they tried to halt the human intruders. Jason's rifle spat back, each squeeze of the trigger sending an alien crumpling to the deck. Rico was a force of nature, his demolition charges turning groups of Vorzat into clouds of shrapnel and gore. A plasma bolt slipped past Rico's defenses, scorching a deep gouge across his chest plate. The armor held, but warning lights flashed in his HUD. Jason glanced over, concern etched on his face, but Rico waved him off. "I'm fine, boss, just a scratch. We need to keep moving." Jason nodded, turning his attention back to the fight. They were close to the power core now, and the Vorzat knew it. The resistance was getting heavier with each step, the aliens desperate to protect their ship's beating heart. They reached the final door, the massive blast shield sealed tight. Rico pulled out a breaching charge, slapping it onto the metal surface. The explosion ripped through the barrier, revealing the cavernous chamber beyond. And there, in the center of the room, pulsed the power core, a seething mass of barely contained energy. But between them and their target stood a dozen Vorzat Praetorians, the elite of the elite. Clad in their own fearsome armor, they leveled their weapons at the humans, ready to sell their lives dearly to defend the core. Jason and Rico charged in, plasma bolts and shrapnel flying. The Praetorians were skilled, their movements precise and deadly, but the humans' power armor evened the odds. Blows that would have crushed unprotected flesh were turned aside, and the enhanced strength of the suits allowed them to match the aliens in human speed and agility. As he fought, Jason caught a glimpse of Mark's team on his tactical display. They had reached the bridge, the War Master's life signs winking out one by one. A surge of hope rose in his chest. If they could just hold out a little longer. Suddenly an alarm blared through the ship, red lights flashing in warning. On the display, Jason saw the Vorzat fleet open fire, their dreadnoughts unleashing a storm of destruction upon the earth below. His heart clenched, imagining the devastation being wrought upon his homeworld. With a roar of defiance, he redoubled his efforts, Rico matching him blow for blow. They fought like men possessed, their armor dented and scorched, but still they pushed forward. Praetorians fell before them, the once pristine chamber, now a charnel house of broken bodies and spilled blood. Finally, only one Praetorian remained, a towering brute of an alien. It lunged at Rico, its plasma blade carving a deep gash in his armor. Rico stumbled, his left arm hanging limp and useless at his side. The Praetorian raised its blade for the killing blow, but Jason was there, his rifle already firing. The alien's head exploded in a spray of bone and brain matter, its body toppling to the deck. Jason rushed to Rico's side, his friend's face pale and drawn beneath his visor. Blood seeped from the rent in his armor, pooling on the deck beneath him. Rico met Jason's gaze, a weak smile on his lips. "Say it's been an honor, Jason. Give 'em hell for me." With those words, Rico's eyes closed, his body going still. Jason knelt there for a long moment, grief and rage warring in his heart. But there was no time to mourn. Earth still needed him. He rose to his feet, turning to face the power core. With steady hands, he set the final charges, the timer ticking down relentlessly. He knew there would be no escape, no last-minute rescue. But if his sacrifice could save Earth, could give humanity a fighting chance, then it would all be worth it. It would all be. As the timer reached 0, Jason closed his eyes, picturing the blue-green beauty of his homeworld. He whispered a final prayer, not for himself, but for those he left behind. And then the world turned white, and he knew no more. Mark burst onto the bridge, his team close behind. The Vorzat War Masters turned to face them, their eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the human intruders. But it was the figure standing among them that made Mark's blood run cold. Councillor Pryler, his face twisted into a smug grin, stood beside the War Masters, his very presence a betrayal of everything the Galactic Council supposedly stood for. "Pryler," Mark snarled, his grip tightening on his plasma rifle, "what the hell are you doing here?" The councillor laughed, the sound grating and cruel. "Isn't it obvious, human? I've allied with the Vorzat to ensure Earth's defeat. Your pathetic species has no place in the galactic community. Once your planet falls, I'll be rewarded with a position of power in the new order." Rage boiled in Mark's veins, his vision turning red. He lunged forward, his power armor propelling him across the bridge with incredible speed. Pryler barely had time to react before Mark was upon him, armored fists pummeling the councillor's face. Around them the bridge erupted into chaos. Mark's team engaged the War Masters, plasma bolts and shrapnel flying as they clashed in a brutal melee. The Vorzat fought with the strength and skill of seasoned warriors, but the humans' power armor evened the odds, allowing them to match the aliens blow for blow. Mark and Pryler grappled, rolling across the deck in a tangle of limbs. The councillor's body was laced with cybernetic enhancements, granting him unnatural strength and speed, but Mark's armor and human determination proved a match. They traded blows, sparks flying as metal met metal. Pryler sneered, his face inches from Mark's visor. "Even if you destroy this ship, human, the Vorzat will still ravage your world. The Council will do nothing to stop it. Earth will burn, and your species will be wiped from existence. Mark headbutted the counselor, the impact cracking Pryla's cybernetic eye. You underestimate us, Pryla. Earth will never surrender. We'll fight to our last breath, and even if we fall, we'll take as many of you bastards with us as we can. With a final, desperate effort, Mark managed to wrap his hands around Pryla's throat. He squeezed with all the strength his armor could provide, feeling the counselor's windpipe collapse beneath his fingers. Pryla's eyes bulged, his mouth gaping in a silent scream as his life drained away. As Pryla's body went limp, Mark turned his attention back to the battle raging around him. His team had taken down several of the War Masters, but more kept coming, pouring onto the bridge from adjoining corridors. Suddenly the ship shuddered violently, the deck bucking beneath their feet. Alarms screamed, warning lights flashing red. Mark's heart clenched as he realized what had happened. Jason had detonated the power core. The flagship was breaking apart, and they had mere seconds to escape. "Fall back!" Mark shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms and explosions. "Back to the Shadow Fox now!" His team disengaged from the War Masters, fighting a desperate rearguard action as they retreated from the bridge. The Vorzat pursued, their weapons spitting plasma, but the humans' armor held, allowing them to make it back to their ship. As the Shadow Fox tore away from the disintegrating flagship, Mark caught a final glimpse of the Dreadhammer on the view screen, consumed in a blinding flash of light as the power core detonated. He thought of Jason, of the sacrifice he had made to give them this chance, and he silently vowed to ensure his friend's heroism would never be forgotten. Earth still faced a battle for survival, but thanks to Jason and the strike team, they now had a fighting chance. Mark knew that the road ahead would be long and bloody, but he also knew that humanity would never give up, never surrender. They would fight to the bitter end, and they would prevail no matter the cost. General Briggs gripped the armrests of his command chair. As he stared at the main view screen, his eyes wide with disbelief. The Vorzat flagship, the Dreadhammer, hung in space, a once mighty behemoth now reduced to a shattered husk. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the ship's core, the explosion spreading outward in a devastating wave of energy. The bridge crew of the Atlas watched in stunned silence as the destruction ripped through the Vorzat fleet. The dreadnoughts and battle cruisers, once symbols of the aliens' unstoppable might, erupted into fireballs, one after another. The smaller ships, caught in the expanding shockwave, spun out of control, their hulls crumpling like tin cans. As the realization of what had just happened sank in, the silence gave way to a roar of cheers and applause. The bridge crew hugged each other, tears of joy and relief streaming down their faces. They had witnessed a miracle, a turning point in a war that had seemed all but lost. General Briggs allowed himself a moment to savor the victory, but he knew there was no time to waste. He stood up from his chair, his voice booming across the bridge. "This is our chance. All ships, engage the enemy. Let's finish this." The Earth fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing as they tore into the reeling Vorzat ships. The aliens fought back fiercely, their warriors refusing to surrender even in the face of certain defeat. But without the guidance of their War Masters, their efforts were uncoordinated and ineffective. The human ships pressed the attack, their crews driven by a righteous fury born of years of fear and desperation. They had watched their worlds burn, their loved ones slaughtered, and now, with victory within their grasp, they would not be denied. Amidst the chaos of the battle, a small battered corvette wove through the wreckage, its hull scorched and dented. The Shadow Fox had narrowly escaped the destruction of the Dreadhammer, its crew shaken but alive. Mark staggered onto the bridge, his power armor still smoking from the close call. He made his way to the communications station, his fingers flying over the controls as he hailed the Atlas. "General Briggs, this is Mark Pearson. We have critical information about the Vorzat invasion." Briggs's face appeared on the screen, his brow furrowed with concern. "Report, Pearson. What have you learned?" Mark took a deep breath, the weight of his words heavy on his shoulders. "Sir, Councillor Pryla was working with the Vorzat. He betrayed us all, conspiring to ensure Earth's defeat in exchange for his own power. Briggs' eyes widened, his face contorting with rage. "That treacherous bastard! I knew we couldn't trust him!" He slammed his fist against the armrest, the impact echoing through the bridge. "I'll make sure the whole galaxy knows of his betrayal. He'll pay for what he's done." As the last Vorzat ship exploded in a fiery blast, a bittersweet sense of triumph settled over the Earth fleet. They had achieved the impossible, defending their home against an enemy that had never known defeat. But the cost had been high, the losses staggering. Ships drifted through the debris field, their hulls battered and scarred. The bodies of the fallen human and Vorzat alike floated in the void, a silent testament to the price of victory. On the bridge of the Atlas, General Briggs bowed his head. His eyes closed in a moment of silent reflection. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Earth would need to rebuild, to prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. But for now, in this moment of hard-fought triumph, they could allow themselves a measure of hope. They had proven that humanity would never surrender, never yield in the face of annihilation. They would fight to their last breath, and they would prevail, no matter the cost. The shattered remnants of the Vorzat fleet drifted in the void, a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen corpses. Earth's ships picked their way through the debris, searching for survivors and salvaging what they could. On the surface, the scars of the invasion were still fresh, cities reduced to rubble and millions dead or displaced. But even as they mourned their losses, the people of Earth stood tall, united in their resolve to rebuild and protect their home. Mark stepped onto the bridge of the Shadow Fox, his new captain's insignia gleaming on his collar. The crew snapped to attention, their eyes filled with respect and admiration for the man who had helped save their world. Mark took his seat in the command chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He would not let them down. In the halls of power, change was sweeping through the government. The old rivalries and petty squabbles of the past seemed trivial now in the face of what they had endured. A new sense of purpose and unity emerged, with leaders putting aside their differences to work towards a common goal. The sacrifices of heroes like Jason and Rico would not be forgotten, their names etched into the annals of history. Far above, General Briggs stood before the Galactic Council, his eyes hard and his voice unwavering. He held up a data pad, the evidence of Prylar's treachery laid bare for all to see. "This council abandoned us," Briggs said, his words echoing through the chamber. "You were willing to let billions die, to let an entire species be wiped out, all for the sake of political gain, and one of your own, Councillor Prylar, actively conspired with the enemy to ensure our destruction." The chamber erupted into chaos, representatives from 100 worlds shouting and gesticulating. Some called for Prylar's immediate arrest and execution, while others demanded proof of Earth's claims. But Briggs stood firm, his evidence irrefutable. In the end, faced with the undeniable truth and the growing outrage of the galactic community, the Council had no choice but to act. Prylar was stripped of his position and placed under arrest, his name forever synonymous with betrayal. And Earth, once dismissed as a primitive backwater, was granted a seat on the Council, a recognition of their strength and sacrifice. But even as they took their place on the galactic stage, the people of Earth knew that their true strength lay not in political power, but in the courage and determination that had seen them through their darkest hour. They had looked into the abyss and emerged victorious, forever changed by the experience. The road ahead would be long and hard, but they would face it together, united in their resolve to build a better future, and they would never forget the heroes who had given their lives to make that future possible. Mark stood on the bridge of the Shadow Fox, his gaze fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy before him. The ship had become a symbol of Earth's resilience, a beacon of hope for a world still healing from the scars of war. Under his command, the Shadow Fox led diplomatic missions to far-flung corners of the galaxy, forging new alliances and defending human interests with unwavering determination. But even as Earth took its place on the galactic stage, Mark felt the weight of his new responsibilities bearing down on him. The ghosts of those he had lost haunted his dreams, their faces etched into his memory like the names on the memorial wall. He found himself standing before that wall now, his fingers tracing the letters of Jason's name. The cold stone beneath his touch seemed to pulse with the echoes of sacrifice, the lives given in defense of their world. "I wish you were here to see this, Jason," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible over the soft hum of the ship's engines. "Earth is finally taking its rightful place among the stars. But the cost—" His words trailed off, the lump in his throat making it hard to speak. As he stood there, the realization washed over him like a cold wave. The true price of victory lay not just in the lives lost, but in the scars left on the survivors. Earth had earned its place in the galaxy, but it would forever be haunted by the sacrifices made to achieve it. The memorial service was a somber affair, the weight of loss hanging heavy in the air. Mark stood before the gathered leaders and citizens of Earth, his dress uniform pristine, his eyes filled with sorrow and determination. "We stand here today as a united people," he began, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "United in our grief for those we have lost, and united in our resolve to honor their sacrifice." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "The road ahead will not be easy. We have earned our place in the galaxy, but we must fight to keep it. We must be vigilant, always ready to defend our world and our way of life." Mark's gaze swept over the faces before him, seeing in them the same determination that burned in his own heart. The price of freedom is eternal watchfulness. We must never forget that lesson, never let our guard down. As he neared the end of his speech, Mark's voice grew stronger, his words ringing with conviction. "We shall defend our planet, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers filling the air. Mark stood tall, his heart swelling with pride and purpose. Earth had endured the unthinkable, had faced the abyss and emerged stronger for it. And as the Shadow Fox lifted off, carrying Mark and his crew to their next mission, the blue-green sphere of Earth receded behind them, a small but unyielding light against the vast darkness of space. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.